So in this video, I am going to do a in-depth review of Substack. I am going to create a new Substack, author a post, show all of the tools and potential customizations very briefly. Then I'm going to flip that and switch from the author's perspective to the reader's perspective. I will sign up for another fantasy author's Substack and rate that experience. And lastly, I'll talk about business concerns, like how much money does Substack take, etc. What are kind of like the business benefits or costs of Substack. And throughout this video, I will be comparing it to what I reviewed in the Patreon video that I did earlier. If you want to like pause this video and catch up on Patreon because you're doing the same thing that I am, comparing these platforms, and articles aren't doing it for you, gosh darn it, go ahead and check out my Patreon video and then come back and watch this video, and you can get a quick overview of the various features that you're going to see in both and probably get a better sense of which one you would like to gravitate towards. So this is the Substack homepage. I am logged in, but I'm going to create my Substack. So Alec at U-Tavern. This is something to think about, what email address you sign up with. I have this whole U-Tavern thing going on. I'm not 100% convinced that I don't want to buy a new domain like the Stitched Realms and create an email address for that. But for right now, I'll just go through with my U-Tavern email address. So you can bring in a list from Patreon, Ghost, I'm starting to hear more of. I'm not 100% sure what it is. MailChimp, Tiny Letter, other places. So that's something I didn't see at Patreon, is like import your lists. That's one of the things that Substack touts as one of their benefits, is just you own your list, more control over your list, etc. I'm going to skip for now. And so you can add subscribers manually. Add friends and family to your subscriber list to help you get started, so you can like invite a bunch of people. Again, I'm going to skip for now. Dive into your interests. So this is one thing they try and work on a little bit more, is discoverability. There's kind of a few suggested tags for Patreon, but those were really like you clicked a tag and all it did was like manually search. So like writing, etc. And whereas this, seems to have a more thought out tag system for discoverability. Yeah, this is asking for your recommendations more as a Substack user, but whatever. Unselect all, right? It's trying to get me to sign up to other people. One of the things I noticed that Substack does a lot more is it's very signy-uppy. Like, it just really, really wants your email address or wants you to follow somebody very much. So the stitchedrealms.substack.com, and tell the world about Alex Substack. Let's do this. So here's a home page. So there's some resources. Is about some interesting questions. How do I publish my first post? Find my first subscribers. Those are good things to read. I kind of like that. There's a knowledge base, but it is definitely less directed than the simplified Patreon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 process, right? So like signing up is a little bit like, welcome to your Substack dashboard. What am I looking at? So here is a checklist though. So turn on paid. Getting paid takes 5 minutes. So you have to connect to Stripe. I didn't set up a paid membership in the other one. So one of the things with Stripe is that you need a separate account for each business. So I think one of the things you could theoretically do with Patreon that you can't do with Substack as easily is like have multiple Substacks, or like, whereas you could have multiple Patreon accounts all feeding into the same account. Whereas with Substack, since they're dependent on Stripe, that means that you have to have a different Stripe account for each Substack. So I mean, if you're just starting out, don't make your life complicated. Don't have multiple accounts, but it is something to think about. That's like kind of more in the businessy side of things. Turn on paid, get your first subscribers so you can add them by email, list, or share a link. Share your Substack. So like, whereas Patreon walked you through like how to actually create your page. This is almost all about sharing it, and there is like write your first post or whatever. I think part of the reason why there's an emphasis on just writing your first page is Substack is very much newslettery, i.e. very often you can just get the posts as an email, and a lot of people do that, so there's less emphasis on like setting up your page. There's a lot of control over different notifications that I could or might not get. That's more of like a reader thing. I think there's a lot more insinuation that you're going to be following a lot of people for free, versus Patreon is like the primary reason you're there is to pay a creator, and sometimes the free part could be hidden. Producing free content on the Substack platform seems to be a big deal, whereas I think with a lot of patrons, yeah, there is free content, but a lot of times their free platform is somewhere else, and then like Patreon is for the paid benefits. So that is a difference between these two. You might like that, you might be like that Substack is kind of all in one both. You might just want to have like a clear, distinct paid place, like this is my group, paid group place, and then some other place where you're posting free content. For example, if you're a Royal Roads web serial author, right, you already have a place to put out your free content where people are finding it, and then the Patreon is just for your paid supporters, right? You might not really want or need a Substack, but you probably could gate everything in your Substack behind a paywall if you wanted. It just doesn't look like it's really built up for that. So there's also chats. These look like DMs, but like a lot of people can reply to them. So this is kind of a weird format for chat. But on the other hand, it allows people maybe to post or chat in groups without just commenting just on a post or something like that, which I don't think Patreon offers. So that's kind of interesting. What I was looking for was more customization of my page. So I scrolled all the way down to the resources section where there's how can I customize my Substack. Not that there was a lot of customization options, but Patreon, what customization options there were like pretty immediately apparent in Patreon, whereas like this is a lot more difficult, right? And then I click on it and it actually opens up a new tab, and then I click a button which opens up a third tab. So this is like a little bit more confusing. So like here's the basics. I can add categories, welcome emails, cool. I like that. I think there was some kind of welcoming message, but I don't know if that was just in Patreon or that was also an email. I'm sure there's some kind of email thing, but there's, website design right here. So I can change like different layouts, feature posts, show top posts. So I can kind of control what goes here. I can put my posts in a grid or a list. I could hide the images if I want, just for the text. For the design, I can, change the background. So as opposed to Patreon, right, where it's dark or light and the user gets to choose the theme, that means in this case, the author gets to choose the theme. So there's some choices, some design choices. I like the customization options. It's a little easy to get lost in here. But let's see. So there's website, site design. You can edit homepage links, enable colored links, enable previous and next post links, right? So that might make it a lot more easy. For instance, and we'll get this in the reader section, if I just want to read consecutive items versus scrolling down through Patreon. You can create a navigation link to certain places. You can add pages. So you're actually like very much building a website with this, which is cool and also more to manage, right? So you can add sections, podcast publication details. So let's try a post. We're going to create a new post here. All right, takes me back into the theme. Interesting that the dashboard doesn't reflect my chosen theme, which is a little jarring, but all right, help your friends start on Substack. Oh, add referral button. They're working hard to get more people in their ecosystem. You can edit the email header and footer, right? So all of these posts can also be sent as emails. That's one thing I didn't test on Patreon, is just like what their email looks like. That would probably be a good thing to get. Anyway, so here's the title. Title of the song, Naive Confession of Love. Anyway, subtitle of the song. So this is the test post. And then here, right, you can add imagery. So I'm gonna, yay. This is a beautiful AI art picture with my face slapped on it. Oh. Anyway, yeah, that feature, like there's a lot more features up here with the link. This is a lot more full featured for authoring. So I like the post authoring. And as someone who's considering doing long form text content, this is a much more robust place to author stuff. So like there are dividers and footnotes. There's a poetry block. Interesting. LaTeX, that's more scientific. That's like scientific notation. Code block, polls, like footnotes. The only thing I'm seeing and not seeing here that like I immediately wanted to look for was like tables. But like you notice how in Patreon you could only do bulleted lists, where you could actually also do numbered lists on Substack. I mean, some of these things don't feel that revolutionary or big, but like, you know, they kind of add up. The styles, normal text, several heading styles. Yep. Some of this stuff, movies, audio, quotes, those kinds of things I think were also available. But I think actually in Patreon, they wanted you to post them separately. So you had like a video post versus just having a text post that you can put video in or not, or text in or not, or whatever as you want to. So a lot freer. Let's see, there's this post info, characters, reading and speaking time. Interesting. So they kind of give you an idea of like how long it takes to read. So if you're long-winded like me, that might be super helpful. View draft history. That's another thing I wasn't seeing before, so a lot more control. This post is for everyone. Order comments. Wow, you can change how the comments are ordered. Add tags. Secret draft link so that you could send that to other people is kind of cool. SEO optimizations, so like you can actually, if you want finer tuned controlled about how it displays in Google or the URL, which, you know, might have implications in how searchable it is, you could do that. So danger zone delete post. So cool controls. I am much more impressed with just the post authoring in Substack than I am with Patreon. So I wanted to continue and just like save as draft or whatever, but I think it's already saved, so you don't have to worry about that. Does that mean I already have a draft history? Yeah. So a lot more to explore in the post area. Let's look at other information. So there are some subscriber stats, sources of traffic, recommendations. Okay, so that's something interesting that they appear to be tracking that Patreon doesn't, which is like who recommends you. And so they're kind of trying to foster cross writer collaboration. That's still a thing on Patreon where you can network. You could be a patron of other Patreon accounts and network with people and guest post or cross post or whatever, right? You could still do that. But it does seem like Substack's soliciting that a little bit more. So let's look at subscribers. Obviously, I don't have the data. There's one subscriber, which is me, I guess. Here's all of the subscribers. You can search by name or email, and then the export button. So you can export various info. And again, I would do that regularly. Good, like keep that backed up just in case site goes down, craziness happens, etc. So stats, you have interesting like Substack versus off Substack. Again, it seems like Substack is trying to do a lot more to promote your to promote discovery within the site and tracking that. So I like kudos here in terms of discovery, reader sharing. Another type of referral, I guess. So, and then again, recommendations. Boom. So a lot of different ways to track how you are being perceived on Substack as a community and your relationships, recommendations, etc., with other like and referrals and all that stuff, which Patreon really seems designed to just accept traffic from other places. And they kind of have a search bar, but it feels like they're not really serious about it. Whereas Substack is putting a lot of stock into like referrals, recommendations, etc. So more than I'm going to get into now, but it does seem like it's fostering more of a community. I don't know in practice whether that looks like people are more open, there's more collaborations, etc. I don't know. So we'll see. So you also have Google Analytics here, but you also have Facebook site verification, Twitter stuff. So this is basically for conversions, right? If you set up a Facebook ad campaign to drive people to your Substack, you'd want the Facebook Pixel ID, and then that allows it to connect to Facebook, so Facebook can track how many conversions you're getting from your ads. And like it's kind of technical, but if you wanted to do in-depth marketing, it looks like just on the face of it, maybe there's some more hidden options I didn't see in the simplified Patreon UI, but like it just looks like there's a lot more information. I'm not even sure what parse.ly is, and I should look that up. But there's a lot more analytics options, chat options, enable chat, create a casual space to host conversations with your subscribers. So like, cool. You can enable chat. That's still coming in Patreon. So I'm based on what I saw here in Substack, I'd still probably go with the Discord for general chats. And I probably would disable chat because I don't want to monitor it in two spaces. But if people requested it, maybe I'd open that up. I don't know. It's interesting. Like if you wanted a feature but didn't want to go all the way in supporting a Discord and just kind of wanted to see if it organically happened, you could enable that. But it is still ahead of what Patreon is offering in the chat department. So let's go ahead and find a fantasy writer to subscribe to. So one of the things instantly that I see that is very different than this is like on Patreon, you can always see how many patrons a place has, although you can't always see the income, which is interesting. This is just a series of posts. It's not finding people. Like, right? It's like looking for a read, and I'm trying to find people. So I had a little snafu here. I was searching for people, but I should have been searching publications. So I was searched for fantasy books. I searched for fantasy author or writer, but that wasn't a lot of descriptions. But when I did fantasy books, I got a whole lot more. I want to actually find someone who's writing them. One of the things I noticed about Substack is it's actually kind of hard to find this subscription tier. So like actually when you click through to a Patreon, big and bold, you see the membership tiers. You might not see all of them, but you see like the first three. And you can even hide the free version. Whereas Substack is really greedy for email. Like before you do anything, even like whatever, you just click the post, before you land on that page, it asks for your email. So it's very email greedy, which is good for getting a lot of new free subscribers and people onto your email list. But it's actually kind of hard to find the paid version. So, I clicked through to here, and I guess, okay, in the home page, there's a pledge your support thing, and I found it. So you have to it's a couple clicks in. And the other thing you notice, this comes from Patreon, not the author, is there's a monthly, yearly, and founding amounts that you can set, but you can't do multiple tiers. It's just one tier, which is a lot simpler. It eliminates the $1 level, which is very popular among Patreons. And so thinking about business-wise, you kind of have to weigh that, and I'll get into that a little bit more in the end in terms of business considerations. But that's just as a reader UI, trying to figure out how to support someone, it was a little bit trickier from the post, rather than I'd search for a Patreon. As soon as I land on their Patreon page, there's the subscription tiers. So here's Isra's Ravenheart's Dark Fantasy Spells. So let's hit subscribe and get some of the paid UI. So I'm not going to sign up for annual because these are both test runs. You can sign up and it tells you what you're getting: subscriber only posts and full archive, comment posts. So like you get occasional public posts. In this one you have subscriber posts. This is less visually appealing and bold and simple than the Patreon one. Like it's still like the same thing. Like it's just the layout, I guess, is less appealing to me. I don't know why, but let me go ahead and subscribe. So interestingly, after you sign up, you can send a note to tell, you can skip it, but you can also choose to send a note to tell the author why you subscribed, which is kind of a nice touch. That's not a Patreon thing. You can also allow the writer to share the note publicly. That's an interesting bit of info. Spread the word and earn rewards, so they will comp you. Okay, so this is something where they're doing more for discovery, so that if you get referrals, you can be comped a month subscription. So that's kind of cool. I think there's more discoverability built into Substack. But I want to see, like, all right, what's my special posts? So I'm kind of going down this list, and it looks like the same posts I saw before I paid for stuff. What I am really not seeing, I mean, I think it looks like there's ways you could organize sections and make a lot more out of your Substack, and I probably do need to like go visit someone who's done this well. But for the average person, just like the default behavior of this, I would never know what I got unless the author somehow very specifically set up, like, this is a patrons only post. Maybe she just hasn't released any paid content, but like I can't tell the difference in the UI between being free and paid. I can't search by my tier to see my rewards. Whereas before in Patreon, if you're free, you scroll down the list and you see like teasers of all the locked content, and you can, and once you're a member, you can search by the content you're getting for different tiers. So if you're curious about like, what am I getting at this tier versus that tier, you can immediately see that. Now, if you're an author, you can probably do that manually, but that's something to take into consideration. Business considerations for Substack. How much does it cost, etc. So it is a different beast than Patreon. It allows only really one tier, but you can, well, sort of two. You can choose to subscribe monthly or annually. You get a little discount if you subscribe annually. And then there's a founding member where people can pay whatever they want. Like you can set whatever you want for a founding member that doesn't really get any additional benefits per se, but just gets lots of props anyway. So maybe there's a way to, again, kind of manually configure that to do more, but versus Patreon, where tiers are baked into it and you can have lots of different tiers, this is very restrictive, although it's also very simple. The other thing is it really doesn't allow you to go lower than a $1 subscription with Patreon does, and part of that might have to do with its various pricing models. So what it does is Substack takes 10% of each transaction, so that's right in the middle of like the paid and premium subscriptions for Patreon. Again, Patreon might have a 5% version, but with only a single tier. But one of the main reasons to use Patreon would be the fact that it manages multiple tiers gracefully. And so you probably go for at least that 8%. Plus, there's a charge from Stripe. So as far as I understand, like Patreon's fee is just flat, right? Like it's just flat 8%. But you get 10% plus the Stripe fee, which is a credit card fee, unless someone signs up differently or whatever. But I think the only options I saw were like credit card based, and so there's a initial transaction fee of 2.9% plus 30 cents. So, and then a billing fee for recurring subscription. So it's like 0.5%. So like, it looks like the math is a little funkier on Substack. Like everything, it is more complicated than Patreon, but it looks like the first charge might be something like 12.9% plus 30 cents. And then afterwards it's 10.5%. So I would say on average a little more expensive than Patreon. As for owning your audience, which is something to think about if you're creating a platform that is going to help you make a living, you want to make sure that you can't lose your audience overnight if something crazy happens. Site goes down, you get hacked, blah, blah, blah. And so that looks pretty much, from what I could see, like Patreon, in the sense of you can export your followers to a spreadsheet that could then be imported to an email list, and with information about their subscription level, etc. And so that is fairly straightforward. It looks like there might be some more integrations in terms of importing contacts from MailChimp, because it's kind of like there's more around building a newsletter. I don't know if that means there's easier ways to export, but maybe it is a little bit easier to export. Maybe there's a way with something like Zapier, which connects apps you can use to like automatically back that up weekly. That would be a good thing to do, but still check on periodically. Anyway, so owning the audience, I think, is fairly similar. All right, for the political elephant and or donkey and or undecided in the room, Substack is a free speech platform. That means absolutely, whether you are right, left, center, or politically homeless, that there's someone on the platform making money for saying things you don't like, and that could be repugnant for you, and people can and have left Substack for that reason. On the flip side, if you're someone who likes to be provocative or likes to read provocative content that goes against the approved corporate media narrative, then maybe Substack is more appealing for you. So that is my review of Substack, the authoring experience, customization, analytics and tools and whatnot, as well as the reader experience, as well as business issues like the fact that it is a single tier, or mostly single tier source, whereas Patreon gives you more flexibility. And so I talked about the good and the bad, occasionally comparing with Patreon. If you are curious about the Patreon experience, you can check out the Patreon video in which I dive into the Patreon author reader experience and business. And you can also check out my future video when it arrives, my video comparing Substack versus Patreon and choosing which one I am going to start my fantasy author career with. It's a big decision. And there are pros and cons to both of them, so it's not going to be an easy decision. Go check it out and let me know in the comments below what you thought of Substack. Do you like it? What did you like? What did you dislike? I would love to hear, if you have a Substack or are a subscriber on Substack, your opinion. If I missed anything important, let me know down below. And then otherwise, check out my 2 videos, and I will see you next time on the Ubiquitous Tavern.